Russia's next target could be Ukraine. Those words were written nearly 7 years ago by Aron in the Wall Street Journal. The article was recently unearthed and has been causing much discussion on social media. In today's press review, we'll look at the piece to see where Aron was right and how his predictions compare to the current situation in Ukraine, where in the east of the country, militants backed up by Russian troops have been fighting Ukrainian forces for 15 months. As Aron wrote his article in 2008, Russian forces were waging war in Georgia. He wrote, "This short war is likely to be remembered as the beginning of a decisive shift in Russia's national priorities. The most compelling of these new priorities today seems to be recovery of the assets lost in the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, which Vladimir Putin has called the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century." From what we've seen of Russia's aggression in Ukraine, we can say that the evidence supports the hypothesis Aron made of a shift in Russia's priorities. He went on to say that anything in post-Soviet countries which went against Russia's interests would prompt a response from the Kremlin. Once again, we have to say that Aron has been proven correct. It was, after all, last year's pro-EU uprising in Ukraine and move away from closer ties with Russia which triggered the current conflict with the Kremlin. Aron even predicted the freeze in ties between Moscow and the West, which we are living through today. He wrote, "If, in the process, Russia must sacrifice most or even all of the fruits of the post-Soviet rapprochement with the West, including membership in the G8, entry to the World Trade Organization, or ties with the EU, so be it." So, Aron was startlingly prescient, but his predictions become even more accurate further on. He wrote, "There is no better place to cause a political crisis in Ukraine and force a change in the country's leadership, already locked in internecine struggle, than the Crimean Peninsula. It was wrestled by Catherine the Great from the Ottoman Turks at the end of the 18th century. Less than a quarter of the Crimeans are ethnic Ukrainians, while Russians make up over half of the inhabitants. As we know, it was the Crimean Peninsula where Russian forces did indeed invade in February 2014, before the insurgency began in East Ukraine. Aron predicted that Ukrainian forces would fight back and therefore give the Kremlin an excuse to send in troops to protect ethnic Russians. In fact, that never happened. Instead, the insurgency in East Ukraine began, funded and armed by Russia. But Aron knew that he might not be 100% correct. He ended with a general statement. Whatever the operational specifics, the Russian political barometer seems to augur storms ahead. It certainly has been stormy since Aron wrote his piece in 2008. His predictive power has been startlingly great. Considering his vision was so sharp 7 years ago, one wonders what he might predict with regard to how the conflict in East Ukraine might end. That's all we have time for today. Join us again tomorrow for another press review. In Kiev, this is Ukraine Today.